The sound of metal against steel echoed through the mansion's east wing, as 300 pounds of pure fury pressed against reinforced barriers. Angel Carter stepped back as she watched the massive white tiger's amber eyes burn with untamed frustration. The animal's pristine coat showed signs of stress, where it had been pacing restlessly, and its roar shook the foundations of the isolated estate. "Nobody goes near them," Mrs. Whitmore had warned her just hours earlier. 2 staff members were injured. The master's tigers are uncontrollable. But as Angel watched the magnificent creature pace frantically in its enclosure, something stirred deep in her chest. Not fear, but recognition. She saw past the agitated behavior to something else entirely, a soul crying out in anguish, trapped and misunderstood. Without thinking, she stepped closer to the barriers and whispered softly, "Annyeonghaseyo." The effect was instantaneous. The tiger froze mid-stride, its massive head turning toward her with sudden, startling gentleness. The other 2 tigers emerged from the shadows, approaching the barriers with curious, peaceful steps. For the first time in months, silence fell over the east wing. From the shadows at the end of the corridor, Choi Jun-seok watched in absolute disbelief as his untamable tigers responded to a single word from the new maid, a word that meant hello in his native Korean. Angel Carter had learned long ago how to make herself invisible. At 27, she moved through the opulent rooms of the sprawling Pacific Northwest mansion like a ghost, dusting priceless artifacts and polishing marble floors while the wealthy inhabitants looked right through her. This job was different, though. The isolation, the strange warnings about restricted areas, and the complete absence of the mysterious owner created an atmosphere that felt more like a fortress than a home. She'd taken the position out of desperation. Her grandmother Margaret's medical bills were mounting, and the pay here was 3 times what she'd made at her previous job. Angel had studied veterinary medicine for 3 years before financial reality forced her to abandon her dreams, but she'd never lost her connection to animals. "The master values his privacy above all else," Mrs. Whitmore had explained during Angel's orientation. The stern head housekeeper led her through the mansion's main areas, pointing out the restricted wings. "When he's here, you'll know to stay out of his way." It was during her second week that Angel first heard the sounds from the east wing. Roaring, agitated pacing, the sound of something heavy against metal. The noise was so distressing that she'd stopped her cleaning entirely. "Los Tigres," Rafael Delgado, the groundskeeper, had whispered when she asked. "White tigers, very troubled. The master. He tries to help them." Angel's heart had clenched. The sounds she'd heard weren't just animal noises. They were the cries of creatures in emotional distress. Despite explicit warnings, she found herself drawn to the east wing, listening to the sounds of restless movement and what seemed like deep psychological pain. Through reinforced glass, she could see 3 magnificent white tigers in what appeared to be a luxurious but sterile environment. The tigers moved with restless energy, their beautiful coats showing signs of stress grooming. One female paced endlessly in a figure-8 pattern, a behavior Angel recognized as anxiety. The largest male repeatedly approached the barriers, his amber eyes filled with confusion and frustration. These weren't aggressive animals, they were traumatized ones. They've injured 2 handlers and caused 3 others to quit. Angel spun around to find herself face to face with the most devastatingly handsome man she'd ever seen. Tall and lean, with sharp, angular features, he wore an impeccably tailored black suit. His dark hair was styled in a perfect mid-fade, parted in the middle, and swept smoothly to both sides. A prominent dragon tattoo curved along his neck, and everything about him radiated controlled power. "You must be the new maid," he continued, his English flawless, but carrying a subtle Korean accent. "I'm Choi Jun-seok. This is my home." Angel's mouth went dry. This was the mysterious master. "I'm Angel Carter. I was just ignoring direct orders to stay away from this wing," he finished. stepping closer. Mrs. Whitmore was very clear about the restrictions, wasn't she? Yes, sir, but those tigers are suffering. Something flickered in Jun Seok's dark eyes. Suffering. They're exhibiting classic signs of psychological distress, Angel said, her professional knowledge overriding her nervousness. Repetitive behaviors, stress grooming, hypervigilance. They're not naturally aggressive. They're responding to trauma. And you know this how? I studied veterinary medicine for 3 years before I couldn't afford to continue. Jun Seok studied her intently. The tigers have been examined by the best animal behaviorists money can buy. They all reach the same conclusion. The animals are emotionally unstable. They're wrong. The words slipped out before Angel could stop them. Look at their body language. They're not trying to escape or attack. They're trying to communicate. They're stressed because they can't understand what's expected of them. Jun Seok moved beside her at the window. Explain. Tigers are incredibly intelligent and social within their family groups, Angel said, growing more confident. In captivity, especially in sterile environments, they can develop anxiety disorders just like humans. That male isn't being aggressive. He's having panic responses. The female doing figure eights is self-soothing, trying to cope with overwhelming stress. Jun Seok was quiet, studying the tigers with new eyes. What would you suggest? The question caught Angel off guard. Environmental enrichment, varied stimuli, problem-solving activities. But most importantly, they need to feel safe. Right now, they're in constant emotional distress. And you think you could help them feel safe? Angel met his gaze directly. I think I could try. Jun Seok stepped back, creating distance that felt both relieving and disappointing. We'll see. For now, return to your regular duties. And Miss Carter, next time you want to visit my tigers, ask permission first. As he walked away, Angel noticed he'd said, next time, not never again. For the first time since arriving at the estate, she felt a flicker of hope. 3 days passed before Angel saw Jun Seok again. During that time, she found herself thinking about their encounter far more than was appropriate. The tigers continued to haunt her thoughts. Every sound of distress from the East Wing felt like a cry for help that no one else seemed to hear. On Thursday morning, she overheard a conversation that made her heart sink. The master's losing patience, Thomas Reed was telling Mrs. Whitmore. If the tigers can't be helped soon, he's considering finding them a different home. The insurance company is threatening to drop coverage after the last incident, Mrs. Whitmore replied. Angel's hands stilled on her cleaning cloth. They were talking about giving up on 3 magnificent animals because no one understood how to help them. That evening, Angel made a decision that would change everything. She waited until the shift change, when attention was focused elsewhere, then made her way to the restricted corridor. The door code was 0613. She'd observed Mrs. Whitmore entering it earlier. The space was larger than expected, with interconnected enclosures allowing the tigers to move between different environments. All 3 tigers were awake, pacing restlessly. As Angel approached the central viewing window, they turned toward her with piercing amber eyes. "Hello, beautiful ones," she whispered softly. The largest male approached the glass, studying her with careful attention. His coat was magnificent despite the stress marks, pure white with black stripes that shimmered in the soft light. "You're scared, aren't you?" Angel continued in the same gentle tone she'd used with frightened animals at her grandmother's rescue. "You don't understand why you're here." The tiger tilted his head, as if listening. The 2 females had also approached, watching Angel with curious intensity. Angel settled cross-legged on the floor. "Your owner? He's Korean. I wonder if you've heard his language before." She had picked up basic Korean phrases from previous clients. Taking a deep breath, she spoke softly. "안녕하세요. 나는 Angel입니다. 당신을 도와줄게요." "Hello, I am Angel. I will help you." The effect was magical. All three tigers stopped pacing, their attention focused completely on Angel. The male pressed closer to the glass, making a soft chuffing sound. The females approached as well, their body language relaxed and curious rather than agitated. "You do understand, don't you?" Angel breathed. "You recognize the language." She continued speaking in Korean, using every phrase she could remember. The tigers responded to each word, their agitation melting away as they settled near the barriers. "What are you doing here?" Angel spun around to find Jun Seok in the doorway, his expression shocked and concerned. He was dressed casually, dark jeans and a black sweater, but still radiated that intense presence. "I was trying to help," Angel said, scrambling to her feet. Jun Seok strode into the room. "You entered a restricted area. You could have been seriously hurt, but I wasn't. Look at them." Jun Seok's gaze shifted to the enclosure, and his expression changed from concern to amazement. The tigers were calm, relaxed, watching them with curious interest rather than agitation. "How?" he asked, barely above a whisper. "I spoke to them in Korean. I think they recognize the language. Animals form associations with sounds, scents, languages. It makes them feel safe." Jun Seok moved closer to the enclosure, and the tiger's attention shifted to him with obvious recognition and affection. The largest male rose and approached where Jun Seok stood, making that same soft chuffing sound. "Baek," Jun Seok said softly, and the tiger's ears perked forward. "Baek?" Angel asked. "It means white in Korean. That's Haneul, sky, and Nuri, world. I named them when they were cubs." "You raised them from cubs?" Angel's heart clenched. "Their mother was lost to poachers when they were 6 weeks old," Jun Seok said, his jaw tightening. "I acquired them through legitimate rescue channels. I hand-fed them, stayed up nights when they were sick. They were my children." Angel felt tears sting her eyes. What happened? Why did they become so distressed? Jun Seok's expression darkened. 6 months ago, there was an incident. Some people who wanted to hurt me broke into the estate and tried to harm the animals. My security team stopped them, but not before the tigers were traumatized. "They're suffering from PTSD," Angel said with sudden understanding. "They don't trust anyone anymore because their safe space was violated. Every expert I've consulted has told me they're beyond help. Too emotionally damaged to recover." "They're not beyond help," Angel said firmly. "They just need time, patience, and someone who understands them, someone they can trust. Like you." There was hope mixed with skepticism in his tone. "Like us. They trust you because you raised them. They responded to me because I spoke your language to them, because I approached them without fear. Together, we might be able to help them heal." Jun Seok studied her face as if trying to read her soul. "Why? Why do you care so much about animals that aren't yours in a situation that could cost you your job?" Angel thought about her grandmother Margaret, who had taught her that every living being deserved compassion. Because they can't speak for themselves, because everyone deserves a chance to heal from trauma, and because I can see how much they mean to you. Something shifted in Jun Seok's expression. He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "This is dangerous," he said quietly. "Not just the tigers. My world, my life, it's not safe for someone like you. Someone like me. Someone good. Someone who sees tigers in distress and risks everything to help them. Someone who speaks to animals in a language that isn't her own because she thinks it might comfort them." Angel's breath caught at the unexpected tenderness. "I'm not as good as you think I am." "You're better than you know," Jun Seok replied. He reached out as if to touch her face, then caught himself. "If you're serious about helping them, helping me, there are things you need to understand about who I am, what I do." "I know you're not just a businessman." Jun Seok's eyes sharpened. "What do you know?" I know you have more security than most government officials. I know your staff is trained to handle dangerous situations. I know you have enemies who would use innocent animals to hurt you. And I know that despite all of that, you hand-fed 3 orphaned tiger cubs because you couldn't bear to let them suffer. Jun Seok stared at her, making some internal calculation. Finally, he nodded slowly. Tomorrow morning, meet me here at 6 a.m. If you're going to help with my tigers, you need to understand exactly what you're getting yourself into. As he turned to leave, Angel called after him. Jun Seok? He paused, looking back. Thank you for giving them, and me, a chance. Jun Seok's expression softened almost imperceptibly. Thank you for seeing them as more than just damaged animals. Angel barely slept that night. At 5:30 a.m. she dressed in practical clothes and made her way to the East Wing, where Jun Seok was already waiting. He wore dark tactical pants and a fitted black t-shirt that emphasized his lean build, the dragon tattoo fully visible. You came, he said without turning around. Did you think I wouldn't? I hoped you would. I wasn't certain you'd still want to after having time to think about it. He turned to face her. Before we begin working with the Tigers, there are things you need to know that will put you in danger simply by knowing them. Angel lifted her chin. I'm listening. My family has been involved in unconventional business for 3 generations, Jun Seok said carefully. We control shipping routes, import-export businesses and various other enterprises throughout the Pacific Northwest. I inherited leadership when my father died 5 years ago. Angel felt her worldview shift. You're telling me you're involved in illegal activities. I'm telling you I'm a businessman who sometimes operates in grey areas. But yes, some of what I do exists outside traditional legal boundaries. The information didn't frighten her as much as it should have. And your enemies? There's a rival organization, led by Alexander Volkolonov, that's been trying to take over our territory. They were responsible for the attack on my tigers. They wanted to send a message that nothing I care about is safe. And the tigers mean that much to you? They're the only family I have left, Jun Seok admitted, his voice rough. My parents are gone. My younger brother Sung Ho wants nothing to do with the family business. The tigers. They're innocent. They depend on me completely. Angel stepped closer to the enclosure. What exactly are you asking of me? I want you to work with them. Not as a maid who happens to have veterinary knowledge, but as their primary caregiver. I'll pay you 10 times your current salary, provide whatever resources you need, and ensure your grandmother receives the best medical care available. Angel's breath caught. 10 times her salary would mean financial security she'd never dreamed of. And in exchange, you become part of my world. You live here, work here, and accept the protection that comes with being under my care. Because once Alexander learns that my tigers are recovering, he'll try to eliminate the person responsible. He'll come after me. He'll try, Jun Seok said, his voice taking on a protective edge. But I protect what's mine. The possessive note made Angel's pulse quicken. And I would be yours. Jun Seok stepped closer. You would be under my protection. What that means beyond that would be up to you. Angel could barely breathe. Why me? You could hire professional behaviorists, because they see the tigers as a problem to be solved. You see them as individuals who deserve compassion, because you spoke to them in my language, not because you had to, but because you thought it might comfort them, and because I'm not afraid of you. That too, Jun Seok admitted with a slight smile. Though you probably should be. Are you going to hurt me? Never, Jun Seok said without hesitation. But my world might. The people who want to destroy me might try to use you against me. Angel thought about her grandmother, about the medical bills, about the dreams she'd abandoned and the life she'd been living in shadows. Then she looked at the 3 tigers and the man who refused to give up on them. I accept, she said quietly. Jun Seok's eyes widened. Angel, you need to understand. I understand that you're offering me the chance to do work that matters. I understand that you're willing to trust me with something precious to you. What I don't understand is why you're trying so hard to talk me out of something you clearly want me to accept. Jun Seok was quiet, studying her face. Because once you're part of this world, there's no going back to being invisible. Once you're mine to protect, you become a target. And if I don't want to walk away, then we start today. But first, you need to meet the people who will help keep you safe. Jun Seok introduced Angel to his inner circle. Kang Min-jae, his right-hand man, was compact with intelligent eyes and a warm smile that didn't hide his calculating nature. Yoon Hai-rin, head of security, was a striking woman who carried herself with lethal confidence. Seo Dae-hyun, his financial advisor, was quiet and observant. So you're the one who calmed the tigers, Hai-rin said. I found a way to communicate with them. Same difference, Min-jae grinned. Do you have any idea how many experts Jun Seok has brought in? You're the first they haven't rejected completely. The financial implications of successfully rehabilitating them are significant, Dae-hyun noted. The insurance company has been threatening changes to our coverage. Those tigers will never be truly calm as long as they're surrounded by people who see them as dangerous liabilities rather than intelligent beings who deserve respect, Angel said firmly. Hai-rin's eyebrows rose. She's got spine, I like her. The question is whether she can handle what's coming, Min-jae said seriously. Alexander's been quiet lately. Too quiet. Which is why we need the tigers functional again, Jun Seok said. They're not just pets. They're part of our security system, but only if they're properly trained and responsive to commands. Angel realized the full implications. These weren't just therapy animals, they were protectors. Beautiful, intelligent protectors. Can you do it? Hai-rin asked directly. Can you train them to be both calm around family and protective when needed? Angel thought about the tigers she'd worked with, about their complex intelligence and social structures. Yes, but it will take time, and it will require trust. They need to know that their family, all of us, will protect them just as fiercely as they protect us. Jun Seok's expression softened. Then we begin today. Over the following weeks, Angel established a routine that slowly began to heal the tigers' psychological wounds. She arrived each morning at dawn, spending the first hour simply sitting with them, speaking in Korean and allowing them to become accustomed to her presence. Gradually, she introduced enrichment activities that engaged their natural instincts. Beck, the alpha male, was the most damaged. He'd been the primary target during the attack. Angel worked with him patiently, never forcing interaction. When he finally allowed her to touch him, a gentle hand on his massive shoulder while he ate, Angel had to blink back tears of triumph. Hanul, the older female, was maternal and protective. She responded to Angel's calm authority, gradually accepting her as family. Nuri, the younger female, was playful and curious, the first to fully trust Angel and the bridge that helped the others accept her. Jun Seok watched these interactions with fascination and growing respect. "You're remarkable with them," he said one afternoon, watching Angel work with Baek on a complex feeding puzzle. "They just needed someone to understand them," Angel replied. "Animals are honest in ways humans often aren't. They respond to genuine emotion, not manipulation." "Is that a commentary on my world?" Angel glanced at him, taking in his relaxed posture. Over the weeks, she'd seen him gradually shed some of his formal distance. "It's a commentary on healing. Trust has to be earned, not demanded." "And have I earned yours?" Angel considered her answer as she watched Beck successfully navigate the puzzle. She'd seen different sides of Jun Seok, the protective businessman, the gentleman who hand-fed Nuri when she was anxious, the leader who ensured Angel's safety without making her feel imprisoned. "You're earning it," she said finally. "Every day." Something shifted in Jun Seok's expression, a warmth that made Angel's pulse quicken. Good, because you've already earned mine. The admission hung in the air between them, heavy with implications. Angel felt heat rise in her cheeks as she met his gaze, seeing something that made her breath catch. But during the third week, everything changed. Angel was working late with Nuri, who had been showing anxiety after a thunderstorm, when she heard voices from the corridor. "The shipment arrives tomorrow night," a man was saying in accented English. "Alexander wants confirmation that your tigers are still problematic." Angel froze, recognizing Dr. Matthew Collins, the veterinarian who had been treating the tigers before her arrival. She'd never trusted the man. There was something cold in his eyes when he looked at the animals. "They're worse than ever," Collins continued. "Completely unmanageable. The Korean's going to have to give up on them soon." Angel's heart sank as she realized what she was hearing. Collins was working with Alexander, providing inside information. And he didn't know the tigers were no longer the liability he was reporting. "Alexander will be pleased," another voice said. "When we move tomorrow night, the tigers will create the perfect distraction." Collins has been keeping them agitated with mild stimulants in their food. Angel's hands clenched into fists. Collins had been deliberately sabotaging the tigers' recovery, keeping them traumatized to serve Alexander's purposes. "What about the new girl?" Collins asked. "She'll be dealt with along with the Korean. Alexander doesn't leave loose ends." Angel's heart stopped. They were planning to hurt Jun Seok, using his beloved tigers as a distraction. She had to warn him, but first, she needed to get the tigers to safety. Moving carefully back into the enclosure, Angel began speaking to the tigers in urgent Korean. "Nanun dangsinul boho halkio, I will protect you." As if sensing her distress, all three tigers gathered around her, their massive bodies forming a protective circle. Angel felt tears sting her eyes as she realized how completely they trusted her now. She was still sitting with the tigers when Jun Seok arrived an hour later, his expression shifting from surprise to concern as he took in her tense posture. "Angel, what's wrong? We need to talk, somewhere private. It's about Dr. Collins and tomorrow night." Jun Seok's expression went deadly serious. "Tell me everything." Angel recounted the conversation, watching as Jun Seok's face grew progressively darker. "Collins has been working for Alexander this entire time, keeping my tigers traumatized to serve his purposes, and they're planning to use the tigers against you tomorrow night. They think the cats are still uncontrollable." "But they won't," Jun Seok said, understanding immediately. "Because you've healed them, because they trust us now." Angel nodded. "We can turn this around, Jun Seok. Instead of being a vulnerability, they can be our greatest asset, but only if we're smart about it." Jun Seok stared at her. "You're talking about using them defensively, about putting them in potential danger. I'm talking about letting them protect their family, the way they want to, the way they're meant to." Jun Seok was quiet, his gaze moving between Angel and the tigers. Finally, he nodded slowly. "Then we prepare, and we make sure Alexander learns exactly what happens when someone threatens our family." The confrontation came at midnight, just as Dr. Collins had promised. Angel stayed in the shadows of the tiger enclosure, her heart pounding as she watched Jun Seok's security team take positions throughout the mansion. The tigers were alert but calm beside her, their powerful bodies ready but controlled. "Remember," Jun Seok had told her during their final briefing, "the tigers respond to you better than anyone. If this goes wrong, you get them out of here." Now, as she heard the sounds of the break-in from the mansion's lower levels, Angel whispered softly to the tigers in Korean, "Jonbi Haseo, get ready." Beck's ears perked forward, and he moved to the enclosure door, waiting for Angel's signal. Hanul and Nuri flanked him, their amber eyes bright with intelligence and purpose. The sound of conflict erupted from the main house. Through the security monitors, Angel could see masked figures moving through the corridors. "Where are the tigers?" She heard one shout in accented English. "Collins said they'd be going crazy by now." Angel smiled grimly. Collins had no idea his sabotage had been discovered, that the stimulants had been replaced with Angel's carefully prepared meals. Her earpiece crackled. "Angel, they're heading your way." Hyren's voice was tense. 3 men, armed. Jun Seok is dealing with the main group on the 2nd floor. Angel's heart clenched with worry for Jun Seok, but she forced herself to focus. "Understood. We're ready." She moved to the enclosure controls. "Gaja!" she whispered to the Tigers. "Let's go." The enclosure door slid open silently, and the 3 Tigers moved out with fluid grace. Angel followed, staying low as they made their way toward the main corridor. The first intruder appeared around the corner, weapon raised. He was expecting caged animals driven mad with stimulants. Instead, he found himself face to face with 3 apex predators, moving with deadly purpose. Beck moved first, his massive body intercepting the man with controlled force. The weapon went skittering across the floor. Hanol and Nuri flanked the corridor, cutting off escape routes. "What the—" The second man's words were cut off as Nuri approached, her powerful presence making him drop his weapon and freeze in terror. The third intruder tried to run, but Hanul was already there, blocking his path with a low, warning growl. Angel stepped out of the shadows, speaking firmly in Korean. "Meomchwo, stop." All 3 Tigers immediately responded, holding their positions. The intruders were trapped, disarmed, and completely at her mercy. "Good boys and girls Angel murmured warmly. The Tigers had performed perfectly, neutralizing threats without causing serious harm, responding instantly to her commands. Her earpiece crackled. "Angel, what's your status?" Minjae's voice was strained. 3 intruders secured in the east corridor. Tigers are responsive. "Where's Jun Seok?" "Handling the main group." Alexander brought more people than expected. The transmission was interrupted by sounds of continued conflict from the upper floors. Angel's heart raced with worry for Jun Seok. "Nanun Gaia Hai," she whispered to the Tigers. "I have to go." But Beck moved to block her path, his amber eyes filled with protective intelligence. He understood she wanted to help their pack leader, but also that she was vulnerable. "You're right, we go together." Moving as a coordinated unit, Angel and the Tigers made their way through the mansion. They found Jun Seok on the 2nd floor, in a tense standoff with Alexander's remaining men. Angel stepped into the doorway, the 3 Tigers flanking her like guardian angels. The effect on Alexander's people was immediate and devastating. Shouts of surprise filled the air as they found themselves face to face with 3 apex predators. "Impossible," Alexander breathed, his face going pale. Collins said they were uncontrollable. "Collins was wrong," Angel said clearly. "Just like you are." At her quiet command in Korean, the Tigers moved with coordinated precision. Within moments, Alexander's people were disarmed and surrendering, the Tigers holding them in place through sheer presence. Alexander stood frozen in the center, his weapon forgotten as Bayek approached with calm authority. "Call them off," Alexander said, his voice shaking. "I surrender." "You came into my home," Jun Seok said, stepping forward. Angel could see a cut on his arm where he'd been grazed during the confrontation. "You threatened my family. You tried to use innocent animals as weapons against me." He walked slowly toward Alexander. "Did you really think there would be no consequences?" Angel watched the confrontation with her heart in her throat. She could see the controlled anger in Jun Seok's face, but then his gaze found hers across the room, and something shifted in his expression. "You're right," Jun Seok said quietly to Alexander. "There should be consequences, but not the kind you're expecting." He turned to Minjae. "Call Detective Kensington. Tell her we have a gift. Alexander Volkolonov and his entire crew caught in the act of breaking into a private residence." Angel felt her breath catch. Jun Seok was choosing the legal route, turning his enemy over to law enforcement, rather than handling it in the traditional way of his world. As the situation was secured, Jun Seok walked slowly toward Angel. She could see the exhaustion in his face, the way he favored his injured arm, but his eyes were bright with something that made her pulse quicken. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his hands moving gently over her arms, checking for injuries. "I'm fine, but you're hurt." "It's nothing serious," Jun-seok said, but Angel could see the pain he was trying to hide. "Sit down," she said firmly, guiding him to a chair. "Let me look at that." As Angel examined Jun-seok's wound, a cut that was painful but not serious, she became aware of the tigers settling around them in a protective circle. Baek lay down beside Jun-seok's chair. Hanul and Nuri flanked Angel. "They protected us," Jun-seok said quietly, his uninjured hand moving to rest on Baek's head. "All of us, because of you. Because they love you, because you're their family, and family protects each other." Jun-seok was quiet, his dark eyes studying her face. "Is that what we are? Family?" Angel's hands stilled on the bandage she was applying. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implications and possibilities. "I don't know," Angel said honestly. "What do you want us to be?" Jun-seok's good hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing gently across her cheekbone. "I want us to be everything. I want you to be the first thing I see when I wake up, and the last thing I see before I sleep. I want to build something with you that's worth protecting." His words were cut off as another sound came from the doorway. Angel spun around to see Dr. Collins standing there with a weapon, his face twisted with rage and desperation. "You ruined everything," he snarled at Angel. "Alexander promised me everything, and you destroyed it all." Time seemed to slow as Angel saw Collins raising the weapon toward Jun-seok. Without thinking, she threw herself forward, placing her body between the threat and the man she loved. The sound that followed was deafeningly loud. Angel felt the impact, like a powerful blow to her chest, spinning her around and sending her to the floor. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard Jun-seok's anguished cry, felt his hands on her face as he dropped to his knees beside her. "Angel! Angel! Stay with me!" She tried to speak, tried to tell him she was okay, but her chest felt like it was on fire and she couldn't catch her breath. Darkness was creeping in around the edges of her vision, but she could see Jun-seok's face above her, see the terror and love in his dark eyes. "Don't you dare leave me," he was saying, his voice breaking. "Don't you dare leave me now." Angel wanted to reassure him, wanted to tell him she wasn't going anywhere, but the darkness was pulling her under. The last thing she saw before unconsciousness claimed her was Baek standing over Collins's motionless form, the doctor's weapons scattered across the floor. The Tigers had protected their family one last time. Angel drifted back to consciousness slowly, awareness returning in fragments. The steady beep of medical monitors, the antiseptic smell of a hospital, the feeling of someone holding her hand with desperate gentleness. "Angel?" Jun-seok's voice was rough with exhaustion and relief. "Can you hear me?" She tried to speak, but her throat felt raw. Instead, she squeezed his hand, feeling his fingers tighten around hers in response. "Thank God," he breathed. "You've been unconscious for 3 days." Angel forced her eyes open, blinking against the bright lights. Jun-seok was sitting beside her bed and she was shocked by his appearance. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his clothes wrinkled. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. "You look terrible," she managed to whisper. Jun-seok's laugh was shaky with relief. "You take a hit from me and then criticize my appearance. You're definitely going to be fine." The memories came flooding back. Collins with the weapon, the desperate need to protect Jun-seok, the impact that had sent her spinning into darkness. "The Tigers, are they—" "They're fine," Jun-seok assured her quickly. "Beck saved your life. After Collins hurt you, Beck stopped him before he could do more damage. Collins is alive, but he'll be spending the rest of his life in prison." Over the following weeks, as Angel recovered, Jun-seok proved the sincerity of his promises to change. He spent every day at her bedside, helping with physical therapy, bringing her favorite foods, and updating her on the Tiger's progress. When Angel was finally released from the hospital, Jun Seok insisted on carrying her into the mansion himself. The entire staff had gathered to welcome her home, but it was the Tiger's reaction that brought tears to her eyes. All three cats surrounded them with gentle purrs, their massive heads butting against her legs in displays of affection. "They know you're hurt," Jun Seok observed, as Baek very carefully rested his head on Angel's lap. "Look how gentle they're being." "They're taking care of me," Angel said wonderingly, "just like family should." Over the following months, Jun Seok began implementing the changes he'd promised. He gradually shifted his organization's focus toward legitimate businesses, using his connections to build a legal empire. Angel resumed her work with the Tigers, but now her role had expanded. Jun Seok had hired her officially as the estate's head animal behaviorist, and she was working with other rescued exotic animals. "You're building a sanctuary," Jun Seok observed one evening. "We're building a sanctuary," Angel corrected. "This is your vision too." As winter gave way to spring, Jun Seok surprised Angel with news that would change their lives forever. "I bought land," he announced one morning, his eyes bright with excitement. 200 acres in the mountains with existing facilities that can be converted. Angel looked at him questioningly, and Jun Seok's smile grew wider. "It's going to be a legitimate wildlife sanctuary, a place where animals like our tigers can live safely, where people can learn about conservation, and I want you to run it." Angel felt her breath catch. "Jun Seok, that's incredible, but the cost is worth every penny. This is your dream, Angel, your calling, and I want to help you make it real." The day Jun Seok took Angel to see the property, she could barely contain her excitement. The land was perfect, rolling hills covered in forest, natural streams, and existing buildings that could be converted into proper enclosures. "From today forward," Jun Seok said as they stood on a hill overlooking the entire property, "this is your sacred hospital for caring for animals." Angel felt tears streaming down her face as the magnitude of his gift hit her. Unable to speak, she threw her arms around Jun Seok and kissed him with all the love and gratitude in her heart. When they finally broke apart, Jun Seok's cheeks were flushed and his eyes were bright with shy happiness. "I take it you approve?" he asked, slightly breathless. "I love it," Angel said, her voice thick with emotion. "I love you. I love the life we're building together." Jun Seok's expression grew serious as he pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. "Then maybe you'll love this too." Angel's heart stopped as he dropped to one knee on the hill, overlooking their future sanctuary. "Angel Carter," he said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You saved my tigers, you saved my soul, and you saved my life. Will you marry me and help me become the man I want to be for the rest of our lives?" Through her tears, Angel could see their future stretching out before them. The sanctuary they would build together, the animals they would save, the family they would create. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes. Absolutely yes." As Jun Seok slipped the ring onto her finger, Angel heard a familiar sound in the distance, the rumbling purr of 3 white tigers who had somehow found their way to the edge of the property, as if they too wanted to witness this moment of perfect happiness. Years later, Angel stood at the edge of the main enclosure at the Carter Choi Wildlife Sanctuary, watching as a group of school children observed Baek, Hanul, and Nuri with wide-eyed wonder. The 3 tigers, now in their prime, moved with the confident grace of animals who knew they were loved and protected. Jun Seok approached from behind, wrapping his arms around Angel's waist. The simple gold band on his finger caught the sunlight, matching the one on Angel's hand. "The sanctuary's expansion has been approved," he said with satisfaction. "We'll be able to take in 20 more animals by the end of the year." Angel smiled, her heart full as she watched the children learn about conservation. The sanctuary had become everything they'd dreamed of, a place where traumatized animals could heal, where people could learn about protecting wildlife, and where their love story continued to unfold. As the tour group moved on, Angel and Jun Seok remained by the tiger's habitat. Beck approached the fence, making the soft chuffing sound that was his greeting to family. "Annyeonghaseyo, Beck," Angel said softly, and the massive tiger's purr rumbled in response. Jun Seok's arms tightened around her. "Do you ever regret it? Giving up your quiet life to join my complicated world?" Angel turned in his arms, looking up at the man who'd given her everything she'd ever wanted. "Never. This is exactly where I belong." The three white tigers settled in the sunshine, their amber eyes bright with contentment. They were no longer the traumatized, distressed animals that had pushed away every expert. They were family protectors and symbols of what was possible when love conquered fear. Angel Carter had once been invisible, moving through other people's lives without leaving a mark. Now she was exactly where she belonged, surrounded by the family she'd chosen, and the man who had learned that true power came not from inspiring fear, but from protecting what mattered most.